So at the end of the 2024 WPL auction for the 2024 season, it's time for a huddle on ESPNcricinfo, where we look back at the significant takeaways, how each squad fared, and what are the headlines on a day where the uncapped Indian duo of Kashvi Gautam as well as Vrinda Dinesh have stolen the show, and Annabelle Sutherland gets a significant pay rise, moving from the Giants to the Capitals. So as I bring in Firdos Munda, Shashank Kishore, Yash Jha, and Sudarshanan, who've all followed this auction very closely. Let's go around the room, everyone, and figure what are the biggest takeaways from this auction. Shashank, let's start with you.
I was massively surprised at how much in demand the top uncapped Indian players were at. Kashvi Gautam and the names that you mentioned, Vrinda Dinesh. I mean, both the players have broken through for India A, and it just goes to show how much the level below the national team is followed these days. But I was definitely surprised at the amounts that they went for. I spoke to Vrinda Dinesh just a while ago, and she said they were looking about 15 lakhs or something is what she would have been happy with, and whatever else she's got is like unbelievable. It's stuff dreams are made of. And I think the price that they've gone for is massive and completely unexpected, mind-blowing stuff.
All right, Sudarshanan.
I think I kind of agree with Shashank in the sense that this auction tells us that there's been an increase in the following in women's cricket in domestic level, at least in India. Because you look at those names that have missed out, those are the regulars, like say Deandra Doughton or a Priya Punia. Like if you had this auction, say 2 years before, these were the players who would have been first picks. But Vrinda Dinesh, Kashvi Gautam, even someone like Komalpreet Kaur, a fast bowler who wasn't actually picked, she came into the accelerated round, and even an Amandeep Kaur, a left arm wrist spinner. So it tells us that there's an increased following of women's cricket at the domestic level. These scouts that each of these teams have really gone on to look at the domestic matches, and the picks tells us that.
All right, interesting. Uncapped Indian players and their price, and the general following towards the Indian domestic players. Firdos.
Yeah, Ronak, I think my first takeaway is obviously an absence, which I know we'll come to a little bit later, and it's the one of Chamari Atapattu not being picked at all. She had such a great WBBL, and I think where we could have seen her get picked was actually where Phoebe Litchfield was picked up. So that was the surprise to me, was that Phoebe Litchfield was preferred by the Gujarat Giants. And I think maybe the discussion is around youth versus experience in that regard when it comes to overseas players. So Phoebe Litchfield is just 20 years old and really, came to the fore at the start of her career as a 16-year-old. Chamari, we know, is synonymous with Sri Lankan cricket and has been around for a really long time. And I wonder if that's showing us something about the direction that these teams are going in that they're looking for longevity over short-term form. And maybe there's a discussion to be had about whether you should pick someone who's really on a hot streak, given that the tournament will take place in 2 or 3 months' time, depending on when we find out about the dates, or you're looking for someone who you think will play for several seasons. And that was quite an interesting one for me.
Yeah, we were having this chat as the auction was progressing, and the IPL franchises, the men's franchises, have learned over time that the tournament doesn't really reward you for long-term investments. It's a short-term success that tends to work. So it'll continue to remain one of the great enigmas of the WPL. What does Chamari Atapattu need to do to actually get in or get a gig? Who knows? Maybe we'll see her as a replacement player. Yash, opening comments.
To me, the biggest takeaway is that the two teams who entered this mini auction with the biggest purse available also leave it with so much money unutilized. Gujarat Giants didn't use up 1.45 crore. UP Warriors didn't use up 1.9, having entered it with 4. And that 1.9, just to put things in perspective, your total purse in the WPL is 12 crore. So UP Warriors essentially have a team where they have not utilized about 1/6 of their funds. And just thinking out loud, there's one common link to these two teams, that these are the two teams which aren't owned, which are ownerships which didn't already have IPL experience. So perhaps just still getting a sense of auction dynamic and not fully utilizing what they had, and maybe pushing a little more at different stages of the auction where they didn't.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point. We're also learning a lot more about the new franchises. This is only the second auction, and fair to call this the first small auction, given the inaugural edition last year. So we're learning a thing or two. Right, the point Shashank and Sudarshan opened with on the uncapped Indian players and their price. I'm hearing the chat on social media essentially around the timing of the A series. Did that really help? Just the fact that we had an A series that saw perhaps players like Gautam or like Vrinda Dinesh get some sort of the spotlight? Or can we believe that this is now around the years counting system that has been rewarded? Shashank?
So Vrinda Dinesh is a massively interesting story. She was part of the India A squad, the emerging team that trained in Bangalore in May before the Emerging Nations tournament in Hong Kong, the Asia Cup for the emerging teams. She wasn't part of that Asia Cup that happened in Hong Kong, and then she was called in as a last-minute replacement because one of the fast bowlers, Yashasri, got injured. So she went into Hong Kong literally on the back of no training sessions, and she played the final because all the other games were rained out. India qualified for the final, and in the final on a sluggish surface, which she wasn't actually meant to play. She only played the final because another player's kit didn't arrive in time at the ground. So she played that final. She comes in, bats on a wicket, a damp pitch, 29 balls, 36. That game has happened. That game happened to be watched by a couple of scouts who had actually traveled to Hong Kong, and that kind of proved to be the turning point. So here she was. She wasn't meant to play that game. She wasn't meant to be in Hong Kong in the first place. She ends up going there, playing the only game which has happened to be watched by scouts, and then that's how she gets shortlisted for all the trials that the teams conduct over the next couple of months. So she went with the Giants and RCB first, then with the Warriors, and then Warriors actually from a scouting camp of one-cap players brought her into the main camp for their for the picks that they already had in the squad. So that kind of gave her the confidence that she may get picked, or she may have an inkling that she's potentially going to be signed. As it turns out, she goes to the Warriors. So that's a massively interesting story that I just found out a while ago.
Okay, brilliant. Can't wait to see how that affects their fortunes in the next edition. The big talking point from the international point of view would be the omission of Chamari Atapattu, which Firdaus has brought up. And she's brought up that perhaps Phoebe Litchfield, if you have to compare, there were only a few overseas slots. Now let's try and understand, for the sake of our viewers too, why someone like Atapattu didn't get the interest, why some of the other prominent overseas names didn't get the interest, and what everyone's reasons could be over here. Sudarshan?
I think it's kind of strange. Even I'm kind of struggling to understand what that move is, because Chamari Attapattu again was one of in the first or second set of all-rounders, capped all-rounders, and it wasn't that they had to wait a lot. But to see a team like Gujarat Giants go for Phoebe Litchfield, I'm still struggling to understand the rationale behind it, because if you look at that squad, they have Beth Mooney, they have Laura Wolfart. If both of them play, they are kind of in the top order. So Phoebe Litchfield, we've seen that she's flexible enough to play across the batting order. Whereas with Chamari Attapattu, this is the reasoning I'm probably making, that Attapattu we've seen in the top three, mainly as an opener. She can bowl, of course, but she's an explosive opener an opener essentially, as opposed to Litchfield, who's also gone up and down the batting order. So that could possibly be the explanation as to why the Giants went all out for her.
Anything else? Anyone?
Yeah, I guess the only other.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess the only other thing, and most of us really did feel that she will be the highest bid, so I guess we're correcting ourselves as well. But just looking at the squads, I feel like not enough teams had a role for an opener, and maybe that's one of the things that the teams felt from the inaugural season, where there were a lot of teams which had very similarly stacked overseas camps, where you saw an RCB, while they had 4 or 5 great overseas names in their squad, not all of them could fit together. I think that held true for Gujarat as well to an extent, to UP. So perhaps that just didn't help Atapattu's cause.
And doesn't it seem almost like what we sometimes see in the men's IPL, where the big superstar names that we all think, oh, that one's definitely going to get a deal, as the men's team started to learn about, whether you should be really putting all your money and all your eggs in that basket, we saw some of them not getting deals anymore. So Deandra Dotton's another one that I think might be worth mentioning. And we know that she was signed up last year and then didn't play for medical reasons, and actually spoke to us on our podcast about how she felt that was a botched situation, and she actually felt it could have been dealt with a lot better. She's another one who is someone who we know has a reputation, but reputation I don't think is necessarily what gets you in. I'm not saying that that's Chamari's situation, because, as we mentioned, player of the tournament in the WPL, and she was very instrumental in Sri Lanka's win over England earlier in the year, and she seems to be playing that role where the team is starting to cause some upsets at international level. So maybe she's not entirely directly comparable with Deandra Dotton, but it feels like with the WPL, the teams are learning a little bit quicker that maybe you do go for some slightly lesser known, maybe even slightly cheaper players, and then that's how you build a squad.
All right. Just very quickly, from those of you that have actually gone through the squads, which franchise was best suited to make a play for Chamari Atapattu where it would have made sense that you think was a surprise that they didn't? Because we also know a number of the franchises didn't have an overseas slot or an opener slot or a captain slot or the skill set Chamari offers. So is there a franchise in particular that was surprised did not even make a bid?
I think it was Giants, because you look at what they did before the auction. They released 10 of their players, 10 players, one of which was Sophia Dunkley, who was their regular opener last year. I know I mentioned Beth Mooney and Laura Wolford as their opening combination, but you look back at that year, Wolford came in as a replacement for Beth Mooney. So essentially, there was an opener they had in Sophia Dunkley. They let her go, and they had 10 slots to fill. So if there was any team that had to go for Chamari Attapattu, I think it was Gujarat Giants.
Yeah, fair point. Fair point. I think the key call is whether they, upon retaining Laura Wolbart, did they almost end the discussion there. So we're learning about these two new franchises, or just all these new franchises when it comes to the WPL. Let's run through the squads one by one now and just touch upon whether more boxes have been ticked or still left unchecked. Firdaus, let me start with you with the Mumbai Indians. They didn't have a lot to do, but they welcome Shabnam Ismail, who makes the swap to the defending champions now, and seemed very keen to join the Mumbai Indians. Already saw a video that she's posted. Good signing?
Yeah, definitely. Shabnam Ismail would be a good signing for anyone at any time, and I'm always going to say that. But I think that they've done well here to acquire her services, because she's retired from international cricket now, which means that she's missing a lot of cricket through the year. She's fresh and she's ready for franchise cricket, and she's actually said that that is going to be her area of focus now. So that's always what you want. They've got Izzy Wong in their side as well. And I almost wonder if that won't be good for both of them, because Shabnam, as we know, is the kind of player that loves to mentor others. She's been doing a lot of work with Tumiseko Kune, South Africa's young speedster, maybe not as quick as Shabnam, but she's looking to get there. So I'm hoping that for Izzy Wong, having Shabnam around is going to help develop her game as well. Maybe we won't see her play as many games as all of them, or even more than 2/3 or more than half of them. But I think she'd be excellent in terms of what she does, both on the field and off the field. And she went for a decent amount of money as well. I think in US dollars, I worked it out to 150,000 or so, which would be in South African rands, close on 12 million, I think, which maybe my math is all wrong. That sounds like a lot of money.
Yeah,
it's a lot of South African rands.
Yeah, that's only going to rise with your end, but yeah, I get it.
Yeah, soon it might. By the time this show airs, it's going to be worth 12 million, right? But yeah, it's a good deal for her for sure.
All right. Yes, Yash.
Yeah, just to add to that, Izzy Wong, Shabnam Ismail conundrum might exist, because you know that in Amelia Kerr and Nat Siver-Brunt and Hayley Matthews, you feel like there are 3 lock-ins.
Yep.
And so realistically, you can't have a team, especially considering Izzy Wong did have a strong season, took the WPL's only hat-trick in an eliminator at that. But I think where Mumbai still managed to strengthen themselves is that if before Ismail entered this team, you had something happen with Izzy Wong. If she gets injured, the trade-off, the fall-off in the replacement fast bowler would have been a dramatic one, and that no longer happens. So Mumbai, while it feels like a luxurious buy, they could afford that luxury, and now they can very easily, if either of the fast bowlers aren't fit, you have as strong a replacement.
It seemed interesting, though, that they were willing to spend pretty much their entire balance purse at one point on Annabelle Sutherland, which means acquiring the services of Shabnam Ismail was obviously plan B, which they were happy to let go of had Sutherland come their way for anywhere between 1.8 and 2 crore, which is where they bid till. So let me look at that squad one more time. Shashank, you will have final word on this. They've picked up a quartet of domestic Indian players towards the end. They seem very pleased, as Mumbai Indians were to pick them up on base price. So between Amandeep Kaur, Fatima Jaffer, Balakrishnan, S. Sajana, are we expecting to see any of these be a breakthrough name next season, or are they simply squad players?
Well, Fatima Jaffer is an all-rounder. She's the niece of former India opener Wasim Jaffer. But beyond just that, she's built up a decent body of work in domestic cricket. She has this reputation of being for the lack of a better word, bits and pieces cricketer. You can bowl handy, left arm seam ups. She can bat in the lower middle order, inject momentum towards the end. So she's had this reputation of being someone who can, chip in with both bat and ball. So I think she's definitely an underrated pick towards the end of the auction. Also, Kirtana Balakrishnan, I'm hearing great things about her as a spinner. She was coached by father of Abhinav Mukund, in Tamil Nadu. So she's come in on the back of a extensive, rigorous scouting process. And Mumbai Indians, over the years, we know that they take this scouting very seriously. So if you've actually filtered through the cracks and come through the scouting process there, you really have to be talented enough. And we've already seen in the first season that they've pushed players who were nowhere near the radar of the India A team or the India under-19 team. Saika Ishaq, for example, at 28, she came into the first season and made waves. So they've got a history, and I think expect big things from these two.
All right, let's go to the Delhi Capitals, who managed to get Sutherland from the Mumbai Indians in a fierce bidding. Was Sudarshan just looking at that? They didn't have a lot of work to do, the Capitals, and they fell just short in the inaugural edition. Annabelle Sutherland goes there, and they picked up Aparna Mondal and Ashwini Kumari to wrap up their 18. Quick thoughts on whether this is an improved Capital side?
Before the auction, if you had asked me what Capitals are in the auction for, I would have said that they are here for a stroll, because the 15 they had were already first choice player. But in Annabelle Sutherland, they almost have a luxury. But I was very surprised that one, they again went on to buy back Aparna Mondal, the backup wicketkeeper for Tanya Bhatia. And number two, they never bid for a leg spinner. There was Amanda Jade Wellington available. There was Alana King as an option. And if you look at the Delhi Capitals squad, they just have one bankable leg spinner who's Poonam Yadav, who's also not in India contention anymore. So these two things surprised me for a squad that looked so good, so strong. They kind of did not have backups for these two aspects. Whereas if you look at an Annabelle Sutherland, there's already Marizan Kaap who plays regularly. In her absence, there are so many options. So these two are the takeaways for me from the Capitals squad.
All right, let's move to the RCB squad very quickly. Yash, you can take us through this one. And they did do a fair bit of shopping. Interesting to have Kate Cross added there, so too Georgia Wareham, when Sudarshan talks about which teams would have gone for a leg spinning option, and RCB seemed to have gone that way. It was a disappointing opening season. Sophie Molyneux picked up towards the end of the day too, so too as Meghna. Quick review of that.
Yeah, Kate Cross obviously stands out. Quite a transition for her. Broadcaster in the inaugural season of the WPL. Now she'll play. And RCB obviously needed a seam bowler, having released Megan Shute. I thought they might have gone bigger on Shabnam Ismail, but I guess they just filled that box earlier. Georgia Wareham is important for them. Leg spinner. I think Delhi and Bangalore were the two teams who you thought could do with a wrist spin option. So Georgia Wareham, with the form she's in, becomes important. I also feel like one of the picks towards the end, S. Meghna, could be an interesting one because she can hit big. One of the things we felt with the RCB lineup was quite similar to how they are in the IPL. It was top heavy and you lost batters. And if Meghna can be accommodated in a power hitting role somewhere in the middle order, that batting lineup might also strengthen.
RCB are a better team than last year, Sudarshan?
Better, yes. I think they ticked two boxes. I think last year we saw, despite a disappointing season, their preference and liking to left-arm spinner. They played Preeti Bose and Sahana Pawar, wanted some control that the left-arm spinner gives. They didn't. They were very expensive. They left them and brought Ekta Bisht and Sophie Molyneux. Both add experience, and with Molyneux, you're assured of batting as well. They also like their all-rounders, and in Wareham, they have a like for Dane van Niekerk, who they expected to fill that middle order role and also give them leg spin, which Wareham will probably do it better than Dane van Niekerk on current form.
All right.
I just want to make a point on Dane van Niekerk, actually, now that her name's come up, and I know we've been talking a bit about absentees, and so to be fair, I think you're actually right. I think that on form, Wareham would probably be better than Dane, but she's been an interesting one because she also retired from international cricket, and it was about 9 months ago, just after she missed out on South Africa's T20 World Cup squad, and her hope was that she could extend her career through the franchises, and now we're seeing that maybe that's not going to be entirely possible. So I think this auction and the fact that RCB released her, which I know was a couple of weeks ago, really it's a line in the sand and maybe a point of crossroads for Dane van Niekerk. What is she going to do after this? And just to go back to Marizanne Kapp, who we spoke about a little bit earlier, and Annabelle Sutherland coming into that squad. Marizanne Kapp is quite close to the end of her career as well, but also we've seen in the last few years really plagued by illness that often sidelines her. So I think getting Annabelle Sutherland in and knowing that Marizanne Kapp might not always be available is a really good move on that side.
Yeah.
So just a little point on those two.
Sure. I think social media is already reminding Kate Cross of her history when it comes to RCB and, CSK. But that should make for a lovely reception if the WPL goes to Bangalore, as we are speculating at this point. Firdaus, why don't you carry on as we look at the Gujarat Giants team, who had a lot of work to do, and they had the most shoes to fill. Yash has pointed out the balance purse they still leave this auction with. Very interesting that Catherine Bryce will create a little bit of history as a Scottish all-rounder. And we thought with Tara Norris last season that maybe there is a stronger case for associate players to be picked up, given the luxury you enjoy of fielding 5 if you must in a playing 11. Only the one associate player of interest in the form of Bryce. But as we look at what looks like a pretty much an overhauled squad for the Giants, thoughts?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a smart move from them, is picking up Catherine Bryce, because as you mentioned, then they can play the 5 overseas players. And to broaden that point, it is disappointing that more associate players are not involved in the league. We know there are a couple of Thai players who had their name in the auction last time around. I know that Jeans was very involved in wanting to play that. And it would be a great showpiece for them. So it would be nice to see a few more of them. Gujarat Giants, of course, they've gone with Phoebe Litchfield for that very nice amount of money. They already have some good players, even though they released so many. Ash Gardner, we know what she can do, a World Cup winner and such a great player across all formats. Beth Mooney, they've kept Laura Wolfart, which I think will serve them pretty well. And then they got some good buys at the end. I say Vida Krishnamurti, she came up quite early on. Nobody took her, and then it took some time. But I'm interested to hear what some of the guys who know more about her history think of her getting picked up, because I thought she would be a name that would get picked up a little bit earlier.
Really? I thought she wouldn't get picked up at all. So let me ask Shashank and make sense of this. Veda Krishnamurti finds a WPL franchise in the second season. Thoughts, Shashank, on Veda's late selection and the rest of that Gujarat Giants squad?
Yeah, I think Veda is actually a very good pick towards the end of the auction. I mean, the only reason why I don't think she went earlier on was because I think teams were waiting to see, and they didn't want to kind of overbid for her. That's one of the only reasons I can think of for her going unsold in the initial stages. She still plays domestic cricket for Karnataka, leads the team, plays all the formats, makes herself available. Unlike a few of the other players who are not in the mix but kind of make themselves available for the other commitments outside of cricket. So Veda is a very active domestic cricketer right now. And she's scoring runs and she's scoring them well. And she had a decent T20 tournament as well. So I'm not surprised by Veda's pick. I think it's a very smart buy towards the end of the auction. She lends experience, lends leadership. So it's a very, very smart buy.
All right. And let's finally look at the UP Warriors and wrap this up. Very interesting that at the start of this auction, both the Warriors and Giants went hard for Phoebe Litchfield. Eventually, the Giants got her. And then came Danny Wyatt, and she was picked up effectively at base price by the Warriors in what was their only overseas signing. Vrinda Dinesh will remain their standout buy, their most expensive buy. We've already heard from Shashank on that. So it's interesting how that played out, that Litchfield went for good money in the first buy, and then Danny Wyatt came to the Warriors for base price.
I think looking at that Warriors squad, 2 things comes to my mind with respect to the team. One is they know to get a steal buy, they know to steal stuff, because Alyssa Healy was a cheap buy for them last year. Danny Wyatt, a similar buy this year, I'd say, especially on current form. She's led the batting charts in the 100. She's also scored heavily in the Charlotte Edwards Cup, the T20 domestic for England, and she made all the right noises. So they picked her up at her base price. Come on. And number 2, it also tells me that this team has been picked keeping in mind a bit of nostalgia, keeping in mind how they did in WPL 2023. Their batting failed, but remember they let off an experienced bowler in Shabnim Ismail. But in that yellow selection, the new picks this year, there isn't a reliable bowler. There is Vrinda Dinesh, an excellent domestic batter. Last year they fell short in terms of Indian batting. They tried Simran Sheikh, they tried Kiran Navgire in various roles at number 3, at number 5. They tried shuffling Deepti Sharma up and down. Nothing of that work. And I think that played a massive part in their auction plans, because they have a lot of batters and not enough bowling options, if you ask me. Where's the experience in bowling? It's with Gauhar Sultana, it's with Rajeshwari Gaikwad, it's with Sophie Eccleston and Deepti Sharma, all of whom are spinners. So one a prima facie lack of, where they lack in terms is a fast bowling department.
All right, final comments around the room. Yash?
Yeah, I'm curious to ask around the room, Ronak, is the Danny Wyatt pick almost a bluff that didn't work out for UP Warriors? Because whichever way you look at it, they entered this auction with one overseas pick and a sizable purse. They had 4 crores. So they knew going into it that they could really go big guns blazing for any of those big buys if they were to come in later. So I just got a sense that maybe they were trying to be funny with the Danny Wyatt bid, and perhaps, I'm not that convinced that that was a first chance buy, because it doesn't add up to me that they have left this option with 2 crores still left unutilized.
Yeah, there's another franchise that there is at least room for a top order batter, and who knows, had they not got Danny Wyatt, we'll have to peek and see how many franchises actually had Chamari Attappattu had they not got player A, B, and C. So maybe that was the way it goes. We'll never know, though. Quick final word around the room, though. Shashank.
I think we haven't heard the last of Chamari Attappattu in the WPL. She could be the Chris Gale story of the WPL season 2, where 2011 no one picked him, comes in midway through as an injury replacement, and turns around the fortunes of not just himself but the league and the team he got picked for. So I think Chamari Attappattu is waiting to come in at some stage and make waves in the league.
Yeah, possible. And we saw the amount of replacements due to injury even in the inaugural edition of the WPL. So we don't rule that out. Of course, we can otherwise wait for the league to expand to maybe 6, 7, 8, 9 teams. And then certainly, if Chamari is still going strong, she gets a gig there. Firdaus, final word.
Mine was going to be on Chamari, but I feel like we've spoken about her a lot. And the one person I was also quite disappointed to see not getting is Nadine de Klerk, the South African all-rounder. And we spoke about teams who maybe lack a little bit of seam bowling. Warriors is one of them. She's not out-and-out pace, but she's pretty reliable. She's got some good skills and some good variation, and did really well in England. She was the leading wicket taker in the Charlotte Edwards Cup at a stage. And I really think she could have benefited from an outing there. But more than that, I think it's been interesting to see how the teams have shuffled and are trying to fill in a couple of the gaps, because there were some obvious ones from last season. And I think what will be really interesting to see now in the second season, and I'm waiting kind of for the dates, because it will come at the back end of the Southern Hemisphere summer, which will be grueling on a lot of teams. South Africa go to Australia, then they host Sri Lanka. They're already hosting Bangladesh. Australia have had series against West Indies. They're also playing at the moment. New Zealand are playing. Pakistan are playing. Of course, they're not in the WPL. But we've seen a huge expansion in the amount of bilateral cricket from the first WPL to this one. And very important cricket, because there's spots at the 2025 Women's World Cup up for grabs. So what you mentioned earlier about will we see a lot of injuries, will we see a lot of replacements needed, will be interesting. And also, will the level be a little bit higher than last year?
All right. Sudarshan?
I think after the last auction or for the last season of the WPL, I would have said Gujarat Giants were the bottom 2 team for me in terms of balance. Have they rectified it? Not a lot. Perhaps they come at number 3, but not a very not one of the contenders, if you ask me. And number 2, if you look at those squads, almost each of these teams have an overseas player or an established Indian name at their 4, 5, 6 spots, which tells me that there aren't enough lower order or lower middle order Indian domestic batters in the offering, which is why someone like Veda Krishnamurthy has been picked this auction. So that is one sad picture of the Indian domestic system as of now.
Okay, brilliant. This is where we wrap things up, but let me ask for an outlandish prediction. At the end of the WPL auction 2023, we are about 2 months away, maybe 2.5 months away from the actual season. So let's pick the 2 strongest teams. As it turns out, I'm sure Mumbai and Delhi would be favored after the season that they had, and they only look like a stronger unit after the auction. So, strongest 2 teams after the auction. Yash?
I think it remains the 2 of them. I'll only give Gujarat Giants a chance if they utilize Catherine Bryce, start using the 5 overseas, because then if you start playing all of them together, that all of a sudden is a much stronger team. Potentially Mooney, Wolfart, Litchfield, and Bryce, and I'm missing someone. I'm missing Ashley Gardner. If those 5 play together, they utilize that fifth overseas card, then they start challenging Mumbai and Delhi.
Okay, Mumbai, Delhi, potentially GG. Firdaus.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Mumbai and Gujarat for exactly those reasons. And Mumbai for Shabnam Ismail. I'm just getting that one in there.
Of course you will. Shashank.
I think Delhi looked the strongest squad on paper, and I would also pick Royal Challengers Bangalore to come in next. Very, very underrated picks, but I think great picks. So I think they've made some good buys at the auction. So, yeah.
Those are your 2 teams. Sudarshan.
Delhi Capitals for sure. Mumbai Indians just marginally better than Gujarat Giants for me. So whichever the second team, but Delhi Capitals the first.
Between the 4 of you, we've not got a single mention for the UP Warriors. What a shame. But we leave it there. Thank you very much to Yash Jha, Shashank Kishore, Firdaus Munda, and S. Sudarshanan. Hope you enjoyed that. That was our review of how things went at the WPL auction here on ESPN Cricinfo.